in a guilty,
Okay.
shameful way. Yeah.
Yeah, well, welcome everybody back to another session of Addiction and the Three Principles with Harry Durbitsky and me, Greg Suki. Today we're going to be discussing guilt and shame. Those are two things that tend to come up often with people in recovery. Just a lot of feeling bad about the past and things that we've done, and I believe it would be a really good topic for discussion. Before we get started, though, something that Harry and I talked about this week that we decided to go ahead and start this off with was I often use this analogy with our levels of understanding in the three principles, or any spiritual understanding, really, because it all comes down to the three principles anyway. But it's kind of like if you take a movie projector out into the middle of an open field and turn it on without a screen or anything, you don't see the picture at all. You know it's there, it's always there, but you don't see it. But if you go out in front of that projector and you even have, say a little Post-it note size screen, you'll see part of the picture. And if you move it over here, you see a different part. So you can have a small understanding and still be able to see the whole picture, just not all at once. And as we grow and as our understanding deepens, you kind of get a bigger card, so to speak, a bigger screen, and you start to see a bigger part of the picture. And, certain people throughout history, and I'm not going to try to name them all, but, like Sid Banks is one of them, where they suddenly see the entire screen. They're given the whole thing and they can just see it all at once. And every single one of us is capable of that. We all have the whole screen. It's like it's all folded up. So we've got just this little part showing, but the rest of it is underneath it. And you can just unfold it, and it's that unfolding of understanding and consciousness that allows us to see more and understand more. Putting it into words, on the other hand, it's a totally different thing. But we just kind of wanted to start off with that, because everybody, no matter where they're at in their understanding, has something valuable to add, because everybody sees at least one part of that whole picture. So that's why we like to encourage people to participate in these calls and really bring questions and insights and share. The only reason I mute people is just keep down on the background noise. So if at any time you want to chime in, just please feel free to unmute yourself or click on the raise hand button in the participants tab, and we'll definitely get you in. So yeah, guilt and shame. First of all, show of hands, anybody that's felt guilt or shame. Yeah, let's all get them up there real high. They're normal emotions, and they're a direct result of where your thinking has been. There's really nothing wrong with them, except that we apply a label to them that they're bad feelings, or that there's something that we shouldn't feel. But it's something that's just a normal part of going through regular life, this human experience that we're going through. And I don't know, I've experienced a lot of it the last few months, off and on. I don't know, for those of you who don't know, my wife left about 4 months ago, very unexpectedly on my part. And it really threw me off, because it seemed like things were going so well. And, so part of the process of going through all that, of course, I, blame myself for everything at some point. And then all that guilt and shame and remorse and all that stuff comes in. But the interesting thing that happened this time, going through guilt and shame for me, was that I didn't fight them and I didn't label them as bad. I felt badly, they don't feel good, but it's not a bad thing. It's just part of some sort of process. And I'm actually really glad that I that I allowed myself to just go through it and feel it. I mean, it was a good solid 6 or 7 weeks of just really not being in any kind of good feeling whatsoever. But it was absolutely vital, I believe, just to let myself go through that. And that's part of, I'm sure you've heard me say before, just to, be gentle on yourself. When you're going through things, just be gentle. Don't beat yourself up. And that's a big part of the recovery process, is that we carry a lot of that guilt and shame with us for all the things we did and the people we hurt and, the things we never accomplished in life, And then, we start trying to get into recovery and get sober and all that. And we still have all this guilt and shame. And the more we beat ourselves up over it, the more guilt and shame we add on top of it. And that, I believe, drives a lot of people back to reaching out for something outside of them. In my experience and all the people that I've talked to, without exception, the reason why we develop an addiction in the first place is because we're trying to escape a feeling we don't like. We're just trying to feel better. And the very fact that we know that we can feel better means that there is something inside of us that is already well. Otherwise, we wouldn't know that we could feel better. There's something calling out, that divine discontent, I've heard it called, and I like that. It's something beyond just this simple human experience. It's our true essence. And it's always there. It's always unharmed. It can't feel guilt and shame and all that stuff. It just is. It's just love. And it's only when we lose sight of that we feel otherwise. And this understanding of the principles, and especially the recovery process, is really just a matter of learning to let go of all those things that take us away from that core place. That's kind of my 2 cents on it. Oh, is it Scott that has? Scott, did you have something to share, I heard?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're unmuted now. Sorry.
Oh, yeah. Well, Harry and I were talking the other day, and he was, wondering if I'd like to be, to say a few things, sort of a little bit, I guess, about my beginning and whatnot. So I figured there's just some comments that come to mind that I'd like to start off with, if it's okay. Is that everybody is on this cast is really picking up something. I know it's new to a lot of people, but you'd be surprised. You wouldn't be on this cast if you weren't. And I think that just realizing it, whether it comes in big spurts or little spurts, is really kind of up to you, and how you do it. I guess where the shame and whatnot maybe fits in is that sometimes you feel that you're not worthy enough for something, or perhaps it's not coming as fast as you might think. And I mean, a lot of us, experience that from time to time. It's funny, it's an interesting topic, because I've been involved with this for a long time, since I was introduced to it in 1979, and I met Sid in 1980. But it's funny, it's not that you don't have your challenges in what you're doing, because you do. And we all go through this. But I was just thinking about a little bit yesterday what I might want to say, but you don't realize how much you're gaining sometimes at that particular moment. Just the fact that, and I know there's some new people, that the new people are on here, they're gaining more than they realize. They really do. Because I've talked to people about this, and I couldn't get them even to take the first step, no matter what the subject was. So I wanted to, that was something that came to mind that I wanted to say.
And it's that unfolding process.
Mm-hmm.
Like I was talking about the little screen becoming bigger and bigger. You know, we can all access that full screen at any time. We can all have that full experience at any point in time. It's really a matter of how willing we are to let go of our old ideas, our old conditioning.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, and it's neat because when these little things hit you, they're really an uplift. You know, you look at life a little bit differently, and all of a sudden things change, and you don't even know sometimes that they're changing. When I was talking to Harry, now this just happened. This is just how it worked for me. I was pretty much hooked on cigarettes for a while, and I wanted to get off of them. You know, I mean, if people want to smoke, that's fine. I just didn't want to, and I didn't like the idea in my mind that the cigarette was telling me what to do. So I would, you know, crunch them up and I'd throw them away, and then I'd go buy another pack. And knowing that my thinking has, you know, that plays a part in this, and this is back when I was just learning. I thought, geez, you know, and just like what you were saying, which really hit home, we certainly give ourselves a bad time. We give ourselves, you know, more of a bad time than we do other people. You know, we have an expectation sometimes. At least I do. So the point that I'm making is that I said to myself, well, if you're going to smoke, enjoy it. Quit bugging me about it. Now, again, this isn't a technique. This is just how it happened to me. And I had a half a pack of cigarettes, and I put them down, and I never picked them up. I never did. I mean, that was something. And then some people would say, well, you weren't really hooked on the cigarettes. Well, I used to go through the ashtray to find a butt when I didn't have a cigarette. So I would imagine I had to have it a little bit. But that was just one of the things that I guess that I'd like to mention, that you never know how your gift is going to come, I guess is what I want to say. It comes in many different forms and whatnot, and it's just a matter of just staying open. And it'll come, really, because I guess I'll say the old cliche: if it can happen to me, it can happen to anybody. Is the way I looked at it. You know? If I'm making sense that way, yeah, it's a bit of a mystical thing, and it doesn't happen more than once. We forget sometimes how much we've changed, you know, because the new normal becomes the normal, you know, for you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Now, the shame part is that you're not living up to what your expectations are, you know, what you think you should be doing can be, right? Or that you feel this shame because you feel like maybe you've let somebody down or whatnot. Well, everybody's doing the best they can from the way they see life. You really have no choice. I mean, that's just the way it goes. So the sooner that you can see that, and for lack of a better word, forgive yourself, or just let it go, you'll see a way to get a better understanding, and then all the pieces of the puzzle will come together. Believe me, you'll see it. Yeah, it's just amazing how that works. Yeah.
It is. Now, would you say when you gave up smoking, say, when I gave it up about 5 years ago, people say, you know, how did you quit? I say, I didn't quit, I just stopped. Mm-hmm. Does that kind of make sense to you? It wasn't like a conscious decision, like all the 5,000 times I tried to quit before that. It was just suddenly, it was just gone.
Well, it was just something that I wanted to stop for whatever reason, you know. There's a lot of reasons, you know, to stop. I wasn't on the bandwagon. I wasn't trying to tell other people to smoke. It was just something that was a habit that I had, that till I planted that seed, that thought seed, that I'd like to stop without willpower, without trying. All of a sudden, one day I just put them down. I don't know why, I just did, you know. And I was enjoying them, you know, as much as I could. It was just something that, again, that I wanted to do. I wasn't making any judgments. I mean, I can say the price was a lot. My wife didn't like it. Yeah. but it was just really, really interesting how that happens. And I only say that, you know, when you talk in metaphors and when you're talking about this formless energy, you know, you can just try as hard as you can or whatever to put it in some sort of form that makes sense. But that's why I say it's planting this seed. The seed was that I really don't want to smoke anymore. I just don't really want to. Why I feel like I have to was a habit that I created, much like the habit I have for driving a car. I don't have to think about it. So, you know, it was kind of neat that when I did stop, and I kept the cigarettes there for 3 years. You know, I left them on the bureau. I left them there. But, you know, the habit was gone. And I'm not, you know, again, I'm not recommending this. This is just what happened to me. And then I picked up a cigarette and I smoked it, and the habit was completely gone. So there was just no need for, you know, for me to want to do that again, which I really liked because it was just something that I wanted to do in life. If I want to run the marathon, I train, and hopefully I can run it, and that I can go ahead and do it. And you do your best, and you see what happens. You plant the seed. Well, I want to do this endurance. You know, is that making sense?
Yeah.
Can I
No, I'm glad
I
you
have-
brought up the habit thing, real quick on the habit part, because in the way you said it, where it's no different, the habit of any kind of addiction is no different than the habit of any other thing that we consider to be good. Driving a car, brushing our teeth. I mean, when was the last time you had to think of how to brush your teeth? But when you were learning how to, you had to count, you had to remember to do these ones and then these ones, and you know, but after a while it became such a habit, it's automatic. And you can pick up that toothbrush and you can get in that car and you can perform those tasks with ease without having to consciously think about what you're doing. It's no different with these addictive patterns either, except that they have different consequences. You know, driving a car, you have these good consequences. You get to work, you make your money, you go to the grocery store, you know, there's good things that come from it. There's consequences to everything. It's just the ones that we have those negative consequences from that we call addictions. Mm-hmm. But you're no less addicted to how you drive your car. And everybody drives the car differently too.
Well, then what I find too, that's happened in my life, now I'm 68 years old, so do the math, that was 79, that the more that I see this and the better I feel, the more I go toward different things to feel good, you know, in a sense. You know, I don't feel as good. And again, I'm not making a judgment, but I don't feel good. I like a beer once in a while, but I just don't feel good on the alcohol. It's just not the same thing that it was years ago, you know, so that's fine. And I'm really comfortable. So I get a good glass of iced tea, which I like, or a good lemonade, you know, but I'm fine, you know, I'm fine with it. So I just, you know, it is my greatest wish that I get across as the best that I can to other people that want to do different things in their lives, that they can see that they have that inside of them again, you know, that it's there. It definitely is. And that just stay open, and you know, if there's somebody that's new, that's been on this, and they don't feel like maybe they're getting something, you're getting something. You wouldn't be on the broadcast if you did. You couldn't take it. Because I've talked to people a little bit about this, and they almost literally ran off. You see what I mean? It's just so much against what they believe that they turn completely off. And I wasn't even talking high. I was talking, you know, this basic, just not ready, you know, to listen. So be thankful, you know, be thankful for any little thing that you get, and boy, you'll get more from it. And I know that. I definitely.
I'm glad you brought up that part about you're not against the drinking. It just doesn't work for you now. And it was something that I saw fairly recently. It's, you know, we know that everything's energy, but we kind of forget that applies to everything. I mean, everything means everything. So alcohol and nicotine and, you know, cocaine and all these things, they have a certain energy level to them. And as long as our level of consciousness, our own energy is below that. When we do those things, they have an effect of raising us up. But there's always those negative consequences with it, which bring us back down even farther. So what I've experienced and what it sounds like you're talking about is that we've raised above that energy level so that when we put it in us, it starts to bring us down. So that's the difference now, is it's not, there's no avoiding it. It's just, it's a non-issue now, because all it can do is make me feel a little bit worse than where I am.
And again, I'm not trying to defend anything, but I like a beer once in a while. You know, I really do, and it doesn't seem to taste as well without that alcohol. But it's only in a great while, and then it's nice because I like the hops flavor. I guess being German, you gotta like beer, you know. But it's not. I know that that more than one or so that I wouldn't feel as good as I do, you know, as I do normally. I mean, that's yeah. And I'm not advocating everything, because just like what you said, everything has consequences, you know. And any kind of anything that you take, I mean, you can't eat too much ginger. It is sort of a toxic. It's kind of good for you, you know, pickled ginger that I eat. So you just have to see it, you know. So I'm not against anything. I just know that everything has a side effect to it, you know, if it has.
Yeah. But that's, to me, that's the true recovery, is that it's not an issue. You can have one, you can not have one, and it doesn't really matter either way. You know, that's the true recovery, not fighting it every day, not waking up and going, okay, just one more day without a drink, or just one more, you know, that's not, to me, that's not living.
Right.
That's fighting, that's struggling.
And that's what, now Chris Heath, that you know, that you had on, was really good. And she said, you know, make sure that if you think that you can go out and have one, and I know people that were very much addicted to alcohol, they can go out and have one every once in a while, they just don't want to anymore. Is that make sure that you are embedded in your health, you know, before you would do that. I mean, I thought that was a nice precautionary, you know, type thing to do. You know, that you're not selling yourself a bill of goods, you see, I think. You know, you know, as somebody wanting to help somebody, I certainly wouldn't want to hurt them with something, you know, that they misunderstood, you know.
Right.
As far as that goes, that I would never want to do. So, yeah. One other thing, and if you don't mind me telling the story, it was really funny how things can happen, or how you can change and you don't know it. This is way back when I was just starting with the 3 principles. And for me, when I learned the 3 principles, I thought, man, I'm going to be my own self-laboratory. You know, I'm going to test things out. I'm going to see how this works at my job and whatnot. Well, prior to that, I had taken a graduate course, and it was this was in the mid-'70s, and Dr. Benson had come out. It was a meditation type course, you know, that you took. Meditation. It labeled you if you're a type A behavior, which is a go-getter, nervous type person, or if you were, you know, type B, a little more mattered and whatnot. And it was really nice, because I would do the meditation and I just would relax and I'd feel really good. Now, I didn't know the 3 principles. I had no idea what they were. But then as soon as I got away from that thought, I went right back to my same old, you know, sort of aggressive, not hostile, but, you know, behavior, you know, and I thought, wow, this is great. If I, you know, every time I feel kind of like wired, I got to go off someplace and do the meditation. So now skip ahead a bit. When I started learning about the 3 principles and seeing how they were such thought-based principles, one day I looked down, and this was a total surprise that my fingernails had grown, right? I wasn't biting my fingernails as a nervous habit. It just disappeared, and I go, oh my gosh, you know, I thought, is this a miracle or what? I couldn't believe it, you know, that nervous habit. And also some little twitches I had sort of went away too, that I noticed later on. I wasn't constantly shaking my foot. So these are things that that were neat kind of gifts or surprises, you know, that happened. That now again, this is just my story. You know, it can be somebody else's, or it can unfold in a different. Just know that it's possible. Just know that this mind consciousness and thought that you have, this free will that you have, is just absolutely incredible. I don't know what you can't do. And I'll say one thing, which is just very important to me when I knew this, and I thought, you know, if I can open up my mind and just keep attached, which I am, to universal mind, well, what can I do? Well, I became an inventor at the hospital, which I didn't think I could be. I became a bit of an artist, you know, very much an amateur artist. And there were some other things that popped up in life, and I thought, wow, this is a kick. This is really a kick, as they say. So anyway.
It's beautiful. You had something to say, Harry?
While you guys were talking, I had a bit of an insight of something I didn't understand about recovery. We're not talking about outside in recovery. Like when you two guys were talking, you explained to me how it's an inside out recovery, where it's not part of our mental process. It just kind of happened. It landed in your lap. You all of a sudden stopped smoking. And suddenly that's our message to people, is that's the way it works. Everybody's looking for a lot of step-by-step information and solving their problem. And I'd love to solve their problem, to be honest, but that's not, this inside-out process is really what Sid was pointing to. I didn't realize that until the way you guys described that. So I want to thank you for that. That was helpful for me, because that now when I go to teach, and Mark goes to teach in the recovery program, we'll understand. It's not dealing with the outside thing, because what happens is it just happens. And that's really genius. I don't know how Sid saw that. It's incredible. So thank you.
You.
Did you have something, Mark?
Yeah, I was, when Scotty was talking, you know, and he mentioned that, you know, we're hardest on ourselves, and it occurred to me, we certainly don't need somebody else being hard on us as well, or judging us, you know, and how incredibly, how grateful I was early on when I'd made a big mistake with, you know, my previous marriage and stuff like that, and how, so it's twofold, but how grateful I was when the few people who continued to see the health in me. You know, you're on your own back, and you really appreciate, that's when you really appreciate someone seeing the best in you, you know, so that's number one.
Yeah, rather than adding guilt to it.
Yeah. Rather than judging you some more, you know, you just don't need everybody piling in. And the other thing is, you know, it's all a delusion. It's all an illusion. And how you can keep yourself in this mode of shame, guilt, regret is kind of the word I would use. You know, past thinking, or, you know, thinking of yourself in terms of what you've done, and instead of the true essence of yourself, and how it's, and that's actually feeding your ego, or that's feeding the illusion that you create in your head. You know, your thoughts. It's all arbitrary, and it's all something that you buy into, and you know, what you want is that feeling of gratitude, like Scotty was saying. That you be grateful for whatever you have been given. You know, you're not looking for more all the time. You're not trying to, you know, it's another big thing that people get into, is they're trying to get it. And how that held me back for 35 years or more, by trying to get it and not just seeing it. And there's lots of proof out there, seeing the change in people, and for heaven's sake, seeing the change in Sid Banks. you know, we know the story, and that's an incredible story. And seeing that will just bring such hope. Anyway, I guess that's good
Yeah,
for.
very good, Mark.
Yeah, Scotty. We don't need to judge each other, do we? For sure.
We tend to do enough of that for ourselves.
Amen.
And isn't that a waste of time?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, really, if you want to waste your time, you can sure spend a lot of time on it.
Yeah.
Whoever told me I do everything. You know? I don't think anybody's ever said that I do everything.
That's the funny thing. The less we get aggravated by our guilt and shame, or
Yeah.
the much shorter the time we are involved in it. And then, you know, you mentioned, Greg, the reason we drink is because we're obviously been thinking too long, hanging around in it too long.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Adding another thought on top of that thought to try to get rid of the thought, you know?
That's right. And you could see that and thought being the magical, not toothbrush, brush that you,
I used to get the wrong way.
but you could see it's magical and it just builds. And so we want to spend less time.
Well, you know, it's good if you have something in your life. It's good to acknowledge the problem, but then leave it go after that. There's something that you want changed, but if you harp on that problem, Roger Mills told me. He said if the problem is you're trying to get over the mountain and you focus too hard on the problem of the mountain, you'll miss the trail that goes around it. And I thought that was absolutely. I mean, that just struck me when he said that. It was just incredible.
Yeah, and I heard somebody say one time, they said that guilt is feeling bad that you did something wrong, and shame is feeling bad that you are somebody wrong, that you are a bad person.
Mm.
So feeling guilt, you know, it's kind of the natural part of it, but turning it into shame, making it something that you carry with you, that's the optional part. Like, yeah, if you mess up and you made a mistake, yeah, you might feel guilty about it, but feel it for a minute and let it go.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Learn from it, you know?
Well, at the worst, get better. Do something, get better from it, I guess. I don't know, realize it and let it go. Let it ride.
See the innocence.
Yeah, that's true.
The innocence in yourself and in others.
Oh, that's really important, Mark. I know that working at the hospital, for me, it was, again, at the beginning, it was a little bit in steps because we really had some patients, you know, that were just their behavior. And the more I saw that, the more I saw the innocence in them, you know, and then how I reacted to them was totally different. And then I had to see, the next step for me was to see the innocence in the people that were supposed to be taking care of these people too, because they're in the same boat to some degree. No, that innocence thing is really important. It really is. And boy, it can change everything on how you see things, how you interact, and then actually help change that or help that person who's ever doing something, you know, to make it the positive change, if that's what the scenario is. Definitely. Absolutely.
Right. It's definitely possible to feel gratitude even for the screw ups.
Oh yeah.
Gratitude's a powerful thing.
Well, and you know, when you see somebody and they're really acting bad, let's say toward you, and again, I always wanted to learn that it wasn't personal. You know what I mean? They weren't really getting on my case because they really had it out for me. They had it in their case because they were feeling so bad that this was their outlet, was to get on me, you know, to give me the hard time, you know, whatever it was, you know. Could be a supervisor, it could be, you know, a number of different things. And when I saw that, then I saw that I could work in a different way and not take it personally, just see that they're caught up in their reality, and then my behavior would change, and then that would make an effect on them, you know, in a positive way. It was really funny how that worked. It really was.
That's the process. That's correct, by the way, Scott.
Mm-hmm.
That's the right way to do it.
Yeah.
Wrong way with guilt and shame, being on the, you know, the helper or whatever, or the right way. And what you described is the right way.
Well, and you know, it was, you know, I think Sid talked about too, get this for yourself always, you know, that's the main thing. Because when you're feeling good, and, you know, the source of this feeling and these thoughts coming, then you can almost, well, you can handle anything in life that comes along. You know, it's not going to be all rosy all the time, but even the really hard times can be less of a harder time and more of an experience than it would have been at one time. Not that we wish anything on anybody, you know.
Right.
And I've seen that since I worked in a veterans hospital with people that had really gone through some really rough times, and the ones that were doing well or handling it and the other ones weren't. On some degree, they knew how their thinking was working, you know, for it. But it certainly was great that I could. What I learned to do, which I really enjoyed, is that, again, it's a metaphor. Was that these people, no matter who they were, if they were, you know, soldiers that had a rough time, or just a person that was just stressing out, and this was really important, is that I could go into their hellish reality. I could look around and I could see what's going on from what they're telling me, right? I could grab their hand, point them to the door, hopefully to pull them out, right? And not get contaminated myself. And I saw a lot of burnout, you know, in the time that I was in. And for that, excuse me. Was amazing, absolutely amazing. Sorry, I get a little emotional.
It's beautiful.
So.
Obviously, something important to say here. Yeah.
Another party heard from.
Yes, Chris has something.
All right, Chris, you're unmuted.
Thank you. I don't know if it's following up what Scott just said, really, and I have met Mark Williams' dog. That's what we heard just before. but anyway, last night we had this jazz festival, and an old friend of mine, I haven't seen him for many years. He told me he was going to play a gig. And the story is that for about 15 years ago or something like that, we lost contact, more or less. And I was told that he was heavily drinking. He had a drinking problem. I didn't know. You know, he was hiding bottles everywhere, and it ended up he fell off stage. I heard the story, on a gig, and terrible. And so I haven't really seen him or some of his friends for years, and so I got to talk to some of the people who are playing with him, still are playing with him, and well, they told me some of the story. Well, he got clean for 10 years ago, so he has a 10-year anniversary. But what I noticed with him was, you know, he looked sad, you know, like depressed. I said, well, what's, you know, because I was as a photographer there, and I was just wondering, there's not even a glimpse in his eye. And I said this to one of his friends that's known him all these years, and I said, what's going on? He doesn't look happy. Has he been like that for a long time? And his friend said to me, yeah, ever since he stopped drinking, he's looked sad. Yeah. So he obviously stopped his problem behavior, but I guess didn't stop beating himself. Or I don't know, but and that's what I mean. What I was thinking about guilt and shame. It can you can be surprised that people can have guilt and shame, but they look as but it's more like a hidden thing. So and I know that from myself. I've had that kind of feelings, and my mother came from a kind of religious background, and that's almost like an institution. But if you don't feel guilt and shame, you're doing something wrong in a religious sense. So it's also kind of interwoven in the culture, I guess. And my friend there, he comes from a religious background too. So I guess in a way, people can you can almost call it normal to be guilty, and say that well, you're really a good person because you're guilty. Yeah. Because then you're not boasting your ego, blah, blah. But what Harry Davidsky is saying, and you, Greg, is more like, well, it's actually the opposite. The guilt and the shame is kind of boosting the ego, really. How just watch me, how guilty I am. So that so just some thoughts on what you were talking about. And what I feel today with the principles is that it's more like a lightness, a lightheartedness. I think that's very important in this work. You feel more lighthearted. I do. I feel more lighthearted. It's not. I don't as easily get caught up in a pattern, and if I do, I kind of recognize it. I can see. Oh, okay. So it's not that important, really. So, yeah, I hope this gave something to, that was just my point.
No, that's an excellent point. I mean, the ego doesn't care about good or bad. It just cares about attention.
Good point.
That's it. I mean, it just wants the attention. It's like a 2-year-old that wants a cookie. It's just going to stop and it's going to do whatever it wants to do until it gets it. I mean, that's all there is to it.
Yeah. Kind of funny.
Very funny. And who's the joke?
What do you think, Deanna?
Well, the most I've talked about and heard about with guilt and shame was some a lecture series or a workshop by Brene Brown. I don't know if any of y'all are familiar with her.
Yeah, heard of
it. And she talked about shame and guilt and the difference. I think, Greg, what you said a while ago about one is just sort of past, focusing on the past of something that you did and allowing it to hurt you today or to pollute your mind today. And then the other is to think yourself that you're bad, shame that you as a person are bad. And she talked about how to overcome that. I find that I have that more, the guilt, I think, more, not shame so much anymore. More when I'm dealing with my family, maybe. But on the other hand, I tell myself, that was a long time ago. There's nothing that you're, that's happening in the now. Everything that you're doing now is fine. It's not something I should beat myself up about, living in a time machine. So that's sort of how I look at it.
Yeah, that's great. That makes sense. I mean, we all screw up at some point. We all do things we didn't intend to do, and it's all innocent. There's that innocence to it that we tend to lose sight of. But there isn't a single moment when any of us isn't doing the best that we can at that point in time. And that's not to say in hindsight we can't look back and say I shouldn't have done that, or I should have done this, or anything like that. It's at that very moment, that decision that we made seemed like the best decision.
Well, and I think the thing too, I've been spending a good bit of time with my daughter in the last few weeks, which is great. But, she told me the other day, she said, I tend to forget that you had that problem. So, and then I turn around and tell myself, well, why should I be blaming me, when she doesn't even remember that, that it's an issue. And it was just, and I'm not too bad about it, honestly. But sometimes I worry a little bit. She'll tell me something that happened when she was little or something like that. But obviously we're past that now. So there's, why let anything like that from the past, or even worry about the future, pollute what's happening here today? And that's sort of how I look at it.
Right. Beautiful. Thank you. Jeff actually has something to add here. You are unmuted.
Yeah, I'm not sure how relevant this is, and it's not very inside out, but back about, I'm trying to think, 8 years ago, I somehow or another, I already knew about the principles, but I wasn't very good about the mind part, the spiritual part of it. And I kind of had a transformation one summer, and part of that transformation was finding soberrecovery.com. And on there, they referred me to a book called Under the Influence. I just Googled it. And it was apparently written by Joyce Maynard. And as I read through that book, she wrote my biography 20 years before I read the book. She had never met me. And I had never, while I was drinking, blamed drunkenness for my behavior. I always accepted responsibility for it. And all of a sudden, I kind of got, and this isn't inside out at all, I guess. But all of a sudden, I realized that if she can, if she knows me by virtue of my use well enough to discuss the several stages of alcoholism and kinds of behaviors and so on, suddenly about 25 years of drunkenness, or the responsibility, the guilt for that, the shame for that, just dropped away. I realized that it was sort of part and parcel with getting to where I was, and it wasn't the result of conscious decisions I made in each case to be a dick. Right. And I know that doesn't sound very inside out, but life is entirely outside in until you realize it's not. Until you see that, and that one particular book was kind of helpful for me in realizing that that I had allowed something to get a hold of me at a level way beyond in my intellect, and way beyond my conscious control. That's all.
I'm glad you actually brought that up about things that are kind of outside the three principles realm. Technically speaking, to me, nothing is outside of it.
True.
So there's truth in everything that's out there. I'm not going to tell somebody. Right. But anything. Like even stuff like a book that's not a three principles book, but it has some ideas in it that kind of point people in that direction. It helps bridge that gap, and it's stuff like that is very important for people who are really stuck in an intellectual understanding too. they may actually get it better from a non-three principle source. Just because they've tried so hard to grasp the three principles, to take it from another angle may actually help them to really see.
Wasn't it Mark that earlier on in the call talked about spending years trying to figure it out? and what was really helpful for me was to see the science behind it. When I keep talking about Andrew Newberg and Mark Waldman wrote a book called How God Changes Your Brain. All of a sudden here they're shooting fMRI pictures of people engaged in a variety of different kinds of thought and actually showing where the energy is being used in your brain. That was all the science I needed to validate what I already knew about SID. That was powerful for me. All of a sudden, I didn't need to figure it out. There it is, and it's not a figure it out thing. It's a see it thing. I can't figure out gravity or electricity or my dishwasher. but all three of them obviously exist, and I don't have to agree to it. It just is.
Great.
Well,
and it reminds me of the analogy of like climbing the spiritual mountain, all the people taking different paths, and sometimes it's a rocky ledge and sometimes it's a flowery field, and the only person who's heading the wrong direction is the guy running around the bottom telling everybody else they're going the wrong way. Just whatever calls out to you, just take from it what is real and leave the rest. There's diamonds are found in some of the nastiest clays and whatnot. So get through that clay and find the diamond. It's there.
Greg.
Yeah. What's up, Scott?
Sid would say the truth is everywhere. He said he was he was checking out in a grocery line, and he said the checkout woman said something that was incredibly profound. I forget what it was. So it's the listener that seems to pick it up, but the truth is there. And he used to say that too. He said, go to your churches, go to your synagogues. He said, but when you're there, whatever the preacher's trying to say, try to look past what the word is, where they're pointing you to, he would say.
Right.
So that was interesting. That to me was just interesting.
That is. Yeah.
Like you were saying, some people will find it one way, some might find it another way, but a rose by any other name is still a rose, isn't it? Truth is truth.
All the paths up the mountain still lead to the peak.
There you go. Go around.
Can I say something? Oh, sorry.
Chris has something.
Is that okay?
Yeah, go for it. This is a discussion. Go for it.
I've been to Salt Spring recently, as some of you know, and funny thing is with the principles is that what I'm realizing now is that I kind of had a long period. It's about 3 or 4 years that 3.5 years since I heard of the principles and started learning about it. And I've been looking a lot at this, what makes the principles approach inside out different from everything else, And what's happened since I went to Salt Spring is kind of recognizing the principles in everything. Yeah. So there is no division. That's what you're saying. And it's so beautiful because that also, so now it gets to be applicable in all kinds of life situations. And not only with the crowd that, have the same opinion so it's there everywhere. and in a way that's also, so why I suddenly realized that just about every kind of thought system or school or whatever. Instead of being now we know something that's makes us we're better or more wise or blah blah.
No, not at all.
No, we simply just see something in a different way.
That's right.
And that's the and that's the beauty, because you don't get to feed your ego.
In that context, I'm going to post on our room a piece that I took out from the native way of seeing shame and guilt, which is totally different than the way we're talking about. It's very, very beautiful. It's a whole different perspective on looking at shame and guilt. And I'm going to post it rather than read it in this room. And you'll see what Chris is talking about. It's pure truth, but it's coming at a different angle from what we're discussing here. And we have to be a little careful in the three principles. We have a tendency to agree with each other. And what you're mentioning, Chris, is it's everywhere in all its different forms and beauty. And I love that. That's the awesome. Native way.
Yeah, I can't wait to read that. And by the way, the group that Harry's talked about is Addiction, Alcoholism, and the Three Principles. It's our Facebook group. So feel free to join that and keep up on our next webinars. We are changing, actually on a quick note since we're getting toward the end here. Starting in August, we're going to be changing this to just twice a month. We'll do it the first and third Sunday, just so Harry and I have time, we can schedule a weekend if we want to go somewhere or do something. So just be aware that starting in August, we'll just be doing these on the first and third Sundays. So one of those times will be a guest speaker, not really a speaker, but a guest conversationalist. And the other one would be most likely something more like this, where we all just kind of open it up for general discussion type of stuff. And if anybody has a topic they would like to have covered, please feel free to contact us. This is about all of us. We're all in this thing together. So if you got anything weighing on your mind, and if you don't want anybody to know that you brought the topic up, then nobody needs to know. I'll take the fall.
And maybe mention the speakers we have in the next 4 months. Just
if I could remember them right now. I know on the 30th we have Sally Wise. I know that. So she's coming up in 2 weeks. Next week we will not have a show. Again, it's summertime, and Harry and I like to do things just like anybody else. So so next week no show, and then Sally Wise, and then I can't remember after that.
Dick Bettinger is coming August 6th.
That's right.
And then the first week in September, we've got our rock star, the most famous hits man in the universe, Aaron Turner's coming back for a repeat show. He has over 1,300 views already on our show, so I'm calling him the rock star. And the next month, the first week, we're going to have Bill Pettit come back again, and then in November, what is that lady's name? I don't know her name, but
Marlena Till. I'm not sure how to pronounce her last name, but she's awesome. I like her a lot. You guys will like her. She has a really good, her own unique perspective on this. So it's nice to hear it from a different angle. And Jeff,
Marlena from Manchester.
Yes.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so she'll be on in November. And Jeff, while you just came on, Jeff has decided that he may open up the Just a Conversation meeting room on the alternate Sundays when we don't have these. So if you're not familiar with that, look up 3P Just a Conversation on Facebook, and you'll get the notifications there anytime Jeff opens up that room. So there's plenty of free resources. So please, anybody out there who's kind of getting into this, do not feel like you have to pay for any kind of training whatsoever. There's plenty of free stuff available.
And contact Greg or myself or anybody you like in the room. The idea is to help all of us. Every time I share with someone, I grow tremendously. And also, what a stimulus in the week. It's fantastic.
It really is.
Yeah, it
Don't
really
be
is.
afraid to ask. I will tell you from personal experience, I'm not going to give anybody's names, but I have been coached by a lot of the top people for free. I just don't be afraid to ask. People are out there to help. Even though people generally charge money, a lot of them charge those larger amounts so they can still offer free or discounted services to people who can't afford it. So don't ever feel like you're stuck. I guess that's the thing. But thanks.
I'll post that article on our room, Greg.
Great.
It's a beautiful article. I highly recommend people take a peek at from a native perspective, not from a 3P perspective. And take my word for it. I'm one of the few people in that world. It's powerful, the native's way of looking at life. So.
Sounds interesting. Can't wait to read it. So thanks everybody for joining us again today. This has been a great conversation. Really enjoyed that.
It has.
I'm going to go ahead and unmute.
Thanks for having us.
Everybody's unmuted now. Oh, you're welcome.
Wonderful.
Thanks for coming.
Wonderful work.
We'll see
Thank
you next time.
All right,
Great.
take care.
Great call.
See you soon.
I love you.
Love you all.
Great day.
Bye-bye.
See you later. I'm off to Winnipeg.